Welcome to episode 79 of the Grip Strip podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm here with my co-host Joshua Fine. What's good, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, Philip. We had an interesting week of racing. We had Laguna Seca, we had Bristol, a lot of action there. Of course, in the other sports like the NFL, Jags fought 0-2, 49ers, I think they're 2-0 was as well, and it seems like that's good for you. We'll talk about fantasy and all that stuff. So glad to talk about it.
Absolutely. We'll get into Josh's sim exploits as always. Before we close the show, we're going to be talking about IndyCars last week at Laguna, second of 3 weeks on the West Coast, which uh, saw Colton Herta dominate at the Herta-drome. It seems like, since we're going to Putin-drome for Formula One, we'll be previewing the Russian Grand Prix, where Egghead will feel at home or be at home while driving in the back. We'll preview that. We'll review IndyCar. We'll get into Long Beach and the championship battle that'll exist for three drivers, but mainly two. We'll get into NASCAR. Their Cup Series is moving on to the second round of the playoff. They raced up Bristol and eliminated four drivers. Larson wins again. Whoop-de-doo. There was other stuff that went on around that allowed Larson to win. We'll get into that with Clyde and Harvick. There was a wreck at the end of the XFinity race, which saw AJ Allmendinger win and then win the regular season title in the process. It was interesting. And then Truck Series also ran there. We'll get into the roundup with MotoGP, Moto2 at Misano. They'll Indy Lights at Laguna, which was interesting this past weekend. We'll preview F2 and F3 at Sochi, so it'll be a regular weekend, unlike what it has been for most of the year. All three series will be at the Putin-drome. Then we'll have World Superbike review at Catalunya, Jerez this weekend, F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, talk about football, and we'll go from there. So, IndyCars, of course, Laguna Seca, one of the classic circuits for Indy cars and sports cars, whatever. Great place for racing in general, but it's a great place for the Herta family. Two-time winner at Laguna Seca was Brian Herta in his career after famously getting passed in the corkscrew by Alex Zanardi. And now his son is a two-time winner at Laguna Seca and actually has passed Brian Herta in wins. A dominating performance, 91 of the 95 laps led by Colton Herta, led every practice. It was basically a grand slam. I don't know if they do keep track of those stats, but I think he did have a grand slam in this race. I would venture, I wouldn't be going out on a limb, and even if he didn't, well, it wouldn't know who. Somebody, probably Palou or Romain Grosjean, who were the guys that were up there, would have probably been the guys to do that. Colton Herta, Alex Palou, Romain Grosjean, your podium. Romain Grosjean was the only person that I think was passing the whole entire day, really. I mean, it's wrong to say. Colton Herta drove away, but Palou he made him work, even though he didn't get there. Grosjean, amongst many in the midfield, or even everybody else, was kind of having to pass and make things happen. A little bit of argy-bargy went on here and there, but, Romain Grosjean proven once again, fresh start in America. His family's going to move here now that he's going to be a full-time IndyCar driver next year, more than likely in the 28 car for Andretti Autosport. Green Rehal finished fourth. Pato Award fifth. Marcus Ericsson, Joseph Newgarden, Simon Pagenaud, Oliver Askew, who started fifth in the Ray Hall Letterman 45, and Ed Jones finished 10th. Scott Dixon was eliminated from title contention, which is rare, of course, for Scott Dixon. Ericsson also was. I mean, it was kind of really a miracle scenario for him to even stay in it. But even with the sixth place finish, he is eliminated, but he will have a great finish to his this IndyCar season. Alexander Rossi got into it with Herta, spun out, and never was a factor after that. Will Power had issues with um, engine quitting and didn't had a poor finish after also being in the Fast Six. So yeah, Colton Herta domination, but it wasn't. It was a pretty interesting race. A lot of strat was going on with different tire calls, different force pit stop strategy, 3 pit stop strategy, the whole bit, Josh. So there was a lot to keep track of, but in the end, it was really all about Colton Herta on this past weekend.
I mean, it was all about Colton Herta and just the dominant weekend, like you said he had. I mean, it's basically about as perfect a weekend that you can have in IndyCar racing. But one thing on Colton Herta's season, I mean, he won earlier this year at St. Pete, which I attended and saw, and that was another dominating win there. He had a chance to win at Nashville, but crashed out of that race. And then, of course, at Gateway, he had a really good car there, and then had engine trouble. So if he had been able to win those 2 races, he could have had 4 wins on the season and probably would be right in the thick of the title battle. And I mean, probably would be the points leader, if anything. I mean, I think the wins would definitely balance itself out, although he has had somewhat of an inconsistent season. And, those failures that I just mentioned are part of that. So that's something you have to think about the what ifs with Colton Herta. And certainly, if he's able to put together a full season, he could definitely be a really dominant driver in this series. And we have to see that's going to be a storyline, I guess, next year is if at least one of the Andretti teams can put together a full year. And then I think also throughout this race, I mean, the other star of this race was Romain Grosjean, like you said, and he was really the only guy that could make any passes. He was making passes in the corkscrew, as Paul Page said, a place that you would not normally try and pass. And he was able to pass Scott Dixon there. He was trying to pass Jimmy Johnson there at one point, and he was able to move his way through the field and end up in third. And talk about another guy that could possibly be going to Andretti next year, replacing Ryan Herter-Ray. If he's able to get into a full-time ride, I think you're going to see a really surprise or driver on all these. I mean, well, he's not really surprised, but I would say for Romain Grosjean, probably an underdog title contender. Definitely somebody that could probably, he's shown that he could potentially win a race. He hasn't yet, but he's had 3 podiums this year and certainly has the drive to be able to potentially win a race. So I think he could be at least a top 5 points title contender if everything goes right for him in a full-time ride next year. But then, also mentioned Jimmy Johnson is a best career finish in IndyCar so far. And he had his own corkscrew pass of his own with James Hinchcliffe. So a lot of positives there for some of the IndyCar rookie class. And of course, Colton Herta going out and winning the race and just purely dominating like that. But yeah, I mean, the other fact of this is that Alex Palou finished second and continued to extend his title lead that he has over Pato O'Ward. And even though Pato O'Ward finished fifth, like I said in the preview for this race, like if he didn't win the race and if Palou was also in the same positional range, it wouldn't really make any difference in the title fight. And in fact, it didn't, and it got even worse. So I think going into Long Beach, I mean, it's pretty much almost all but one for Palou. Just has to go out and not make any mistakes in that race. And then I think Pato O'Ward's only chance is if Alex Palou has like some kind of catastrophic failure in the race and he gets taken out or something like that. So looks like it's going to be Palou's title, but there's always that outside possibility that Pato O'Ward goes out and wins the race or something, and Palou has some kind of accident or failure. So going to be an interesting conclusion to the IndyCar season, but it's definitely a very competitive one that we've had.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be an IndyCar season without the championship coming down to the final race. NASCAR has to manipulate things to have a final race championship. IndyCar doesn't. I don't know how many years in a row it's been where this championship has come down to the final race, albeit the way the points fall out, as Josh said, it's going to be very difficult for Pato Award to get this championship. He would, as Josh also said, it would basically take what happened at the Indy GP in regards, or at Gateway, to have like either catastrophic engine failure like he had at Indy GP, or get taken out like he did at Gateway, and then we might have a discussion, which in turn might also open up the discussion for Joseph Newgarden, the two-time champion who's still alive mathematically, but basically would need a miracle. Need the qualifying points. Needs to pole, needs to probably get everything, get the whole bit, fastest lap, the whole thing, every point he can get. Essentially what Colton Herta did last weekend with help. That's the only way he would have a chance to win his third IndyCar championship. But we will get into that in more detail later. I mean, other standout guys, though, I mean, Ray Hall's had an interesting year. He's basically the best of the rest to be. I mean, I think the McLaren team has taken that step. Like with Pato Award, they're not. I don't consider them a smaller team anymore. McLaren is basically fully vested in there. It's their team. They're a team that's winning Formula One again, getting involved everywhere, and you have a stud in Pato Award. Other than that, you have Ganassi, 3 Ganassi cars, a Penske, and an Andretti car. Ray Hall's the best of the rest. He's ahead of 2 Penske guys, one that's not going to be there next year. And then Alexander Rossi, of course, Andretti car. So big deal. He's had a good year. He's had some rough runs that probably took him out of a better position. It's the same thing with Colton Herta. I'm just looking at his stats, courtesy of Racing Reference. Birmingham, Baba got involved in a wreck early. And then you look, he had an issue in Fort Worth with brakes. Then you look at some of these other races. He was outside of the top 10 3 races in a row. Indianapolis Grand Prix, also the 500, and the first race at Belle Isle. Mid-Ohio, he finished 13th. He gave away the win at Nashville. Gateway, drive shaft while leading. So, I mean, you have 5 finishes outside of the top 15. You can't do that in this series and expect to win a championship. I mean, he's building on it, though, to be fair to Herta, considering how the experience he has and all that stuff. I mean, you look at Ray Hall in this case, he's got one of his better averages, not his best average. I mean, he had his best average finishes in the 2015 through 17 when he was winning races every single year. He finished 4th, 5th, and 6th those years. Since then, he's kind of been in a slip, but now he's getting back in the groove. Qualifying is kind of a major weakness, which is part of the problem. His average finish, though, isn't bad. To be fair to him, considering where his team is at relative to the other ones. We looking at top 5, a lot of top 5 finishes. The Gateway result where he got wrecked early was a dagger, along with the crash at Indianapolis in the 500. Those, while he had a car that could have possibly won, those 2 races, along with St. Pete, were probably races where he'd want to. We'll look back in regards to his point standings and what might have been in regards to the 2021 IndyCar season once we get past the Long Beach Grand Prix here this coming weekend. NASCAR was at Bristol this past weekend, the Bristol night race, and it delivered. It always seems to. It proves once again you don't have to put dirt on it. But the top 7 We're in the chase. 8 of the top 9. What is it? 8 of the top 9, 10 of the top 12 were chase drivers. So Larson ends up leading the most laps, 175, and gets his 6th win of the 2021 season. Clyde led 129 laps, ended up finishing 3 laps down in 25th, but he played a role in the finish. You have guys that were involved in stuff. Chris Bell was 7 laps down. He had issues, but he was able to advance. The guys that didn't advance were McDowell, Kurt Busch, Eric Almirola, and Tyler Reddick. So that was a tough deal for those guys. They should just reset their points back to where they were. I don't understand the stupidity of how they set the points up. It makes no sense. But if you suck, you suck. You shouldn't be able to just that's a discussion for another day, I guess. But Larson wins over Harvick, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman, giving Hendrick 3 of the top 5. Keselowski, Truex, Eric Jones starting 22nd, finishing 8th in the Petty 43. Hamlin, DiBarito, the top 10. Logano, 11th. Reddick, Briscoe, Ross Chastain, and Austin Dillon, the top 15. Other guys, you got Bubba, Prix, there's Almirola and Kurt Busch, Richard, amongst other people. So, Hendrick, it was a Hendrick benefit of sorts, but there was a lot of their Penske guys up there that had some speed. You had Gibbs guys that were up there, or at least in the case of Denny Hamlin, he was up there early. But in the end, the 2 things you take away are Kyle Larson gets yet another win, and in turn also Chase Elliott and Kevin Harvick racing that ended up with Chase Elliott spinning out, getting damage, getting knocked out of the possibility of winning, and then in turn blocking Kevin Harvick to allow his teammate to win, and then the ensuing whatever slap fight that they had with each other on pit road with Jordan Bianchi trying to get sound, and then the 2 of them wanting to run off and get privacy with each other when they go and give each other a circle jerk.
I like the way you put it there, but yeah, I mean, that was an interesting fight. Well, not really a fight, but it was more of a heated discussion there after the race. But I mean, that was basically the story of the race, and probably maybe one of the stories that affects the title fight here for the Cup Series. And with with Chase Elliott, I mean, he had the lead there, and then got doored by Kevin Harvick. Flat tire, went to pit road, and then was able to block Harvick. Well, he doored Harvick back, and then blocked him later, or held him up, and that allowed Larson to get back into the picture and pass Harvick there for the win with a couple of laps to go in Bristol night race. But this is going to be an interesting fight, because if we see what happens at the Charlotte Roval or at Martinsville, or even at Phoenix, that's going to be something to look out for if those drivers are near each other, if they're side by side, or anything like that. We have to look for something where, if there's the opportunity there to move them out of the way, or potentially spin them out, I think that's definitely going to be a thing that could happen there, and definitely will make at least have a lot of interest there for that storyline with Chase Elliott and Kevin Harvick. And talk about the discussion itself, I mean, it was kind of interesting to see them later discuss it in Chase Elliott's hauler. Whatever reason they did that, and I guess they didn't want to do it in front of the cameras and stuff, because Jordan Bianchi, like you said, was right there, and Harvick several times was like, "Oh, stop filming this," or "Stop recording," whatever. And then eventually they just went to the hauler, and don't really see that in racing. Normally 2 drivers have their dust up on pit road or wherever in the garage, and then they move on. Maybe they call or text later on, and then move on with life. But this one is a little they actually had a interesting discussion, I guess, or whatever was going on. Not sure what it was said, but it was definitely a little bit out of the norm as far as driver arguments go. And for the rest of the guys like Larson, I mean, this adds to his win total for the year, and then adds to his playoff point total for the year, and continues to give him more cushion as we go on in this playoffs. And then, of course, for Harvick, even though he didn't win, he's now, by the way, 12th in the standings once again. They, after all the reseeding and all that stuff. So, if he had been able to win, that could have given him cushion going into the, a little bit of cushion at least, going into this next round here, at least position himself a little bit higher above everybody else. But for the rest of the field, I mean, you had Denny Hamlin finishing ninth. He had 65 laps led. It was kind of up there early on, but then kind of faded away towards the end of the race, and just didn't, I guess, didn't have the pace, especially the last run that they had. Just wasn't there. And then other guys, I mean, Ryan Blaney had, towards the middle portion of the race, I mean, he had the lead for a little bit there, and then that was like right around the time Kevin Harvick was starting to charge towards the front. But I mean, he didn't really have any pace towards the end, and wasn't able to keep up with Harvick. And of course, William Byron, who's kind of mired mid-pack, throughout the entire race, but then towards the end was able to climb up all the way to third and basically race his way into the second round. And of course, drivers like Tyler Reddick, who literally needed to make one pass on Joey Logano, and then probably would have got him into the next round, but just wasn't able to get the drive off of the corners to be able to get up to Logano and maybe move him out of the way or pass him cleanly, and just wasn't going to happen. And then of course, like guys that we may have thought could have been a factor in this race, like Kurt Busch, just never had it throughout the entire night, and they were pretty off. Eric Almirola, who I think we both had him out of the playoffs, but there was also the possibility that he could be in just because he was so close on points, and just kind of had the opportunity there. He was in that same battle with Logano and Tyler Reddick, but then just kind of faded in the last couple of laps, and then ends up finishing outside looking in. But that was basically the race there, just the continued drive the title fight. And then, and talk about the flat tires and stuff. I mean, there was a lot of guys that had flat tires. Kyle Busch, he had his issues and started to flirt with the cut line there once that happened, which, I mean, could have been a bigger issue if they had spun out or crashed and then been unable to finish the race. But they were able to quickly get onto pit road once that flat tire happened. Then Christopher Bell, he also had issues there, hit the wall, finished 7 laps down, and put his position a little bit in jeopardy too, but not by much. So a lot of guys had issues, but then, in the end, Kyle Larson gets on top. I mean, talk about the Bristol night race itself and possibility of it being a championship race. I mean, I think it could be a championship race if they make it, or if they want it to be. And then it also puts into question the Bristol dirt race, which probably should have been just a one-off. And but I doubt that this last time that they have Bristol night race, they're probably gonna have it again next year, which I think they already did confirm because the schedule came out. But really, the Bristol night or dirt race is made irrelevant by this race, and they should probably hold the dirt race at another track or go to a real dirt track or something like that if they want to have dirt track racing in Cup Series. But then, yeah, go ahead.
I agree with that, man. There's plenty of great dirt tracks in this country, Eldora, that could go and hold a cup race, and they don't want to. They want ridiculous sanctioning fees, so then they have to do it within the constructs of the tracks they have, which we'll get. I forgot about that part of the schedule. We'll probably get into that because it's Vegas and the Cup Series. It's a 550 rules package. We might just spend that time to preview the second round, but also really talk about the 2022 schedule. To be fair, yeah, the dirt race is a waste of time there. Having a pavement, having the proper race they had, the long run there, I think, played a role, as you mentioned, in regards to the guys that got eliminated. Reddick, Almirola, both were close, had a chance. Almirola didn't really have a great car all night, and neither did Kurt Busch. So they basically eliminated themselves. To be fair, Kurt Busch got eliminated at Darlington when he slammed, or not Darlington, at Richmond when he hit the wall
Richmond.
45 laps into the race while running in the top 5. That basically eliminated him. The 10 didn't really have speed. The 8 car, kind of unfortunate circumstance, but when you consider they basically backdoored it, a lot like the 10 and the 34, that's why you get yourself into that spot. Kurt Busch is probably the one that would be like really mad, because I'm sure he's going to be very motivated to run out this year, the rest of the season with this team, as they go into they switch over to the Trackhouse effort, and his current teammate Ross Chastain will take over that ride. William Byron needed a lot of help. He got a little bit of assistance in regards to the Gibbs guys almost stepping on or going and dick stepping themselves. Alex Bowman was generally irrelevant, but somehow or another got top 5 out of this race. First time I think we really talked about him all around. It's something we will see, because as it stands right now, William Byron's on the current cutoff for the start of the second round. Logano, Keselowski, Chris Bell, and Kevin Harvick are the 4 guys that are out. It'll be a little bit more interesting. The Hendrick cars outside of course, Larson, are kind of up against the cut line right now. Kyle Busch has points, but really it's a pretty close battle. It's only 27 points from 2nd to 12th. And you get down into 19 points or 20 points between 5th and 12th. So talk about winning stages, the whole bit, that could kind of flip around quickly. But we'll see how the round of 12 goes in regards to the Cup Series, starting at Vegas. Xfinity Series, as I mentioned, what's it called? AJ Allmendinger goes and wins the race, wins the regular season title in the process, crashing. The only lap he led all day was the final lap. Him and Austin Cindric got into it. Allgaier, the 3 guys that are the 3 most likely drivers to win this championship, really all got into it, making contact, running over each other. And in the end, AJ Allmendinger is now tied in points with Austin Cindric going into the first round of their playoff starting this weekend. 24-point gap on Justin Allgaier, and then it goes back from there. You have guys like, you have Jeb Burton, who doesn't know what he's going to be doing next year at this point. Myatt Snyder, who, with the announcement of Sheldon Creed going to that car, doesn't have a ride. Nobody know. Buckshot Jones probably will keep his ride because he has money, and we don't know about Herbst or if there will be any Fords out on the Xfinity circuit next year. Of course, Harrison's going to Cup. The only thing I think we know about the Gibbs situation is that Ty is going to be running full time. We know the guys at JRM are back, so the 7 and the 9, so they're just running for next year anyway. And Haley, of course, is moving up the Cup, so they're going to need at least one new driver at Colleague Racing, along with AJ Allmendinger next year in the Xfinity Series. But before we get into all that, figuring out who's going to go where, that was an interesting finish there at Bristol, to say the least, Josh. The 2 guys that are most likely going to be battling at Phoenix for this championship, end up making contact and going in the wall and destroying a lot of other equipment, and are now going to battle, or been battling all year, but really they're going to be battling to see who will be the Xfinity Series champion here in 2021 for sure.
Yeah, it was a really exciting finish there. You saw AJ Allmendinger, Austin Cindric, Justin Allgaier kind of just beating each other's doors off there in the corners. And I mean, Austin Cindric had an opportunity to take the lead, but then Allmendinger took the lead from him. But then last corner, Allmendinger overdrove the corner and then uh, allowed Austin Cindric to get right back beside him. And then Austin Cindric, of course, getting off of the corner right there. I mean, if he didn't want to make contact, he was going to not have the same drive off, have the same line as Allmendinger there. So he had really no choice. I mean, to win the race, kind of just had to make contact there with Allmendinger, and then that led to the exciting finish with both of them crashing, coming to the line, which never really see that ever. And I think the last time an Xfinity race finished like that is probably Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Carl Edwards at Iowa. Although, of course, that situation was more of, I think, Ricky Stenhouse blowing his engine and Carl Edwards just running into the back of him. And of course, we won't count any of the Daytona or Talladega finishes because those were inevitable to start with. Of course, like Kyle Larson going into the fence at Daytona 2013, and then some of the other races where they were wrecking to the line. But that was all restrictor plate racing. But at a normal track where you don't have restrictor plates or pack racing or anything like that, this is a pretty unique finish to finish like that, especially the short track. And it shows for Austin Cindric, he's willing to put everything on the line, even if it means wrecking Allmendinger there. But that's how it goes sometimes, and could be a preview. I mean, realistically speaking, with the way Phoenix and that track layout is, could be a preview of the Phoenix championship race if both of them make it into the last race to win the title. So that would be really exciting finish to the season and to the title with two cars like that wrecking coming to the line to win the championship, and definitely would be very controversial, but then also exciting. So we'll have to look out and see if that happens, if anything. And you have Allgaier, of course, who was there, but then didn't have a chance to. He got into it with them, so he did have a chance to recover and win the race. But of course, if he also makes it into the final round and Austin Cindric and AJ Allmendinger take each other out, he could end up being champion. So can't count. You can't count Austin Cindric, or can't count Justin Allgaier out of this title fight. He just has to kind of just lay back behind Allmendinger and Cindric as they go throughout this playoff round. So I think for me, this title fight is probably more interesting to me than the Cup Series, because I feel like there's a little bit more volatility in the Cup Series. Although I think it's going to end up coming down to Larson and Hamlin, but here I think it's a lot more clear who the championship battle is between. It's between Allmendinger and Cindric mostly. So that's what I'm more interested in, is just the strategy and just the battles between these two cars, these two drivers, teams as they go throughout this entire Xfinity playoffs.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Xfinity. It's very top heavy with who it's about. It's just a head to head battle, really. To be fair, as Josh mentioned, but really maybe we add Allgaier. Okay, so we know it's going to be one of those three. In the Cup Series, we have Larson and Hamlin, and it's been a Hendrick versus Gibbs battle most of the year, and it probably will end up that way. I have a hard time believing any Ford will get to the Final Four. I mean, it's possible Logano pulls one out of his ass, maybe Blaney, but it is. I mean, it's more interesting. I think the Truck Series battle, which we'll get into here in a moment, also is intriguing because you have the Sheldon Creed aspect. Now he knows he has a job, he has a future, and he's going to an organization, at least on the Xfinity side, that has proven with the right talent they can run up front and win. So big deal for him. He kind of gets to relax and run it out. And he'll be going against the guy who's trying to get himself back up to whether it's an Xfinity car or a Cup car that is one of the better young talents in the sport too. So it's kind of head to head in a lot of these series, but it's more straightforward in the Xfinity and in the Truck Series, which we'll discuss right now. The trucks ran on Thursday night, and they had Sheldon Creed there and Chandler Smith backdooring his first career win to knock Todd Gilliland out of the playoffs. The points saw Hocevar +3, Ben Rhodes +2, Zane Smith +2. If Chandler Smith does not win that race and get into Sheldon Creed, which would have given him a sweep, he would have been knocked out of the playoffs. So a little bit more argy bargy, as Calvin Fish would say there. Chandler Smith doing that to get his first win. Gren Enfinger finishing second. John Hunter Nemechek third. Friesen fourth. Sauter fifth. Carson Hocevar sixth. Crafton seventh. Zane Smith eighth. Ben Rhodes ninth. Todd Gilliland 10th. So in regards to the playoff guys, 8 of the top 10 were playoff guys. Doug Coby in his Truck Series debut finished 12th, right behind Josh Berry. You had Sheldon Creed, who led the most laps, basically the entire race, and got moved, won both stages, got moved, finished 19th. And then Austin Hill, who got wrecked and was up there most of the day, so he would have had a chance to possibly make it in. But unfortunate late season collapse for a guy who's been known to be somebody that can compete for championships, especially since he got into the 16 truck. Chandler Smith. So gives Kyle Busch Motorsports two trucks in the round of 6. They're eliminating down. They'll reset, run 3 races. Las Vegas, I believe, it was Talladega and Martinsville, and they'll eliminate down to 4 from there. The points gap. Sheldon Creed starts 24 points out behind John Hunter Nemechek. Then and Ben Rhodes is 31 back. The spread between Zane Smith in 4th and Stuart Friesen in 8th is only 8 points. So that can go and flip around with very little issue within the confines of the stage racing that they have in NASCAR. Of course, win and you're in. Talladega is going to be a wild card. Martinsville is always tough, and it'll be cold and at night. This race at Vegas, we'll get into the previews and all that later, but kind of lands one sort of way. But we'll get into all that. But yeah, Chandler Smith getting a first win, doing something usually guys that are young guns at Kyle Busch Motorsports have not been able to do on the full-time side, which is win. Albeit he had to, use Sheldon Creed up to do it, but Chandler Smith did what he had to do and made old car or truck owner happy, advancing both of his trucks into the second round of the playoffs there, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, for Chandler Smith, I mean, he had to fight off both his teammate and John Hunter Nemechek, and then also Sheldon Creed there. I mean, 5 laps to go, he doors Sheldon Creed, and Creed gets a flat tire, and then from there it's Chandler Smith versus John Hunter Nemechek, and then he's able to out corner Nemechek in last couple of laps, and then Nemechek faded back to third, and he wins the race. So finally, the other Kyle Busch car goes out and wins the race. And now all 3 of the Kyle Busch trucks have won a race. If you count Kyle Busch winning race, and then Nemechek, who's dominated most of the season, and now Chandler Smith winning race. So I guess, for that team, good for their company. and now Chandler Smith still on the outside looking in, going into this next round here in the playoffs. But maybe he'll have to pull off something here again, possibly at Martinsville if he's had the opportunity to do that. So this championship, like you said, is a little bit more straightforward. I think here going into Las Vegas for Nemechek, I think he dominated this race back in the spring. Obviously, they've probably made some changes, made gains since then. But what does the rest of the field, as far as the playoff field, look like? I mean, we've seen Sheldon Creed have an amazing first round after not having a great regular season. Does he have anything here at this mile-and-a-half track for Nemechek? What's the gap between those teams look like on a track like this? I think those are definitely all factors that we have to look at going into this next race. I think for the rest of the field, I mean, Ben Rhodes still has a chance. I mean, he's had chances before at Las Vegas, but didn't close through. But I think now for him, this is definitely another opportunity to go out and try to win a race in the next couple of races. Zane Smith, right, flirting on the disaster with the cutoff line. So he'll have to mind him where he's in the points championship along with relative to Chandler Smith, who's only 3 points behind him there in the championship. And, of course, most of our Friesen, who probably are also still close in that fight, but I don't know if they have the pace to be able to make it into the next round. And, of course, Matt Crafton, the seasoned vet in this title fight overall, could use his veteran experience to be able to make it into the championship four as possibly as an underdog, dark horse position for him. So a lot of these guys still have an opportunity, but I think it's ultimately going to come down to Creed and Nemechek.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's been what this season. It was John Hunter for a good part of the year, and then Sheldon Creed kind of took off during the summer. And I think Sheldon Creed is like the easygoing guy. He's like Robbie Gordon 2.0, but he's mad chill, California dude. And he knows that he's got a ride next year. So it's like, oh, well, whatever. GMS, they're all about winning championships. They want championships. They've fallen short a couple times with other drivers. Creed came through last year, but I think they want another one, and that's where it's going to be. It's going to be between the two biggest teams in the truck series, really. And we'll get into that preview for the Vegas truck race in a little bit, along with all the NASCAR races that'll be coming up. The roundup this week will start with the MotoGP at Misano, the circuit named after the late Marco Simoncelli. Not one of the better tracks generally for racing in general, but in motorcycles, it's not horrible. And we saw a good one for the what they call the Bologna Bullet Ducati bikes there this past weekend at Misano. Pecco Bagnaia goes and gets the victory there at Misano. So Pecco Bagnaia beats Fabio Quartararo by 0.364 of a second. Enea Bastianini finishes third, his first career podium on a 2-year-old Ducati, which is great performance there. The team that will become the Valentino Rossi owned team next year. And looks like we don't know if it'll be sponsored by the Arab, the Saudi oil company that usually is at sponsors plastered all over Formula One, but we'll see about that. Marc Marquez finished fourth, Miller fifth, Joan Mir sixth, Pol Espargaro beats his brother Alic seventh and eighth, Brad Binder, Taka Nakagami, the top 10. Michele Pirro on a wild card Ducati finished 11th ahead of Johan Zarco, who's been in the title battle for most of the year. Maverick Vinales making his debut for Aprilia, finished 13th. Stefan Bradl filling in or doing a wild card appearance on a Repsol Honda, finished 14th ahead of Alex Marquez in 15th. Franco Morbidelli made his debut on the Monster Energy Yamaha team, finished 18th. Valentino Rossi was 17th. Miguel Oliveira, 20th. Jorge Martin had to retire from the race. Iker Lackawanna and Alex Rins both wrecked. Andrea Dovizioso, in his return to MotoGP on the Petronas team, finished last of all the finishers that were classified. In regards to Moto2, Fernandez finish. Raul Fernandez gets the W there over Remy Gardner, the Red Bull KTM duo there at Misano. Beats Raul Fernandez over Remy Gardner, Aaron Canet, Sam Lowes, Marco Bezzecchi, top 5. Augusto Fernandez, Ayogura, Javi Vieje, Fabio Di Gianantonio, and Celestino Vietti Rasmus. That's a name. Finished 10th. The American riders, Cameron Beaubier finished 21st. Joe Roberts finished 23rd. So rough weekend for them in regards to the standings. Right now, Remy Gardner has pretty much got one hand on the title. 34-point lead on Raul Fernandez. Roberts is 12th. Cameron Beaubier 17th. Go back to Moto GP. Pecco Bagnaia has moved to second place with his second consecutive victory. He is now at 186 points, so 48 points back of Fabio Quartararo, basically 2 races. So it'll be difficult for them. Next race will be the U.S. Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas. Be nice to see MotoGP back there here next week. We'll preview that on the GSP. Joan Mir 3rd, Zarco 4th, only a point ahead of Jack Miller. Brad Binder 6th, Alex Espargaro, Maverick Vinales, Marc Marquez, Miguel Oliveira, the top 10. The Indy Lights were at Laguna Seca last week, which saw the battle between Kyle Kirkwood and David Malukas continue. Of course, it's interesting that neither guy right now is lined up for sure for an IndyCar ride next year. Kyle Kirkwood goes and gets his 9th win of the season in race 2 over David Malukas, Linus Lundqvist, Daniel Frost, and Benjamin Peterson finished in the top 5 in race 2. In race 1, Kyle Kirkwood over Linus Lundqvist, Benjamin Peterson, David Malukas, and Rasmus Lind. So double win for Kirkwood, gives him a 10-point lead going into the finale at Mid-Ohio in a couple weeks' time. Linus Lundqvist is in 3rd, Benjamin Peterson 4th, Daniel Frost in 5th. The guy who's actually going to get an Andretti ride is 6th because his daddy's got a shit ton of money. But we'll see what happens with Kirkwood and Malukas. If one or both of them are able to get a ride in the IndyCar series next year, you consider the likes of of Dale Coyne. They're looking for at least one driver. You would think Ed Carpenter. You have what's it called? The whatever Ray Hall team. There's the the Meyer Shank. So there are options. We'll see. Of course, the IndyCar off season starts here on next week, so there'll be time to put budgets together, I guess, and stuff to see who's going to go where. But figure we'll hear about some of these announcements over the next few weeks while they're trying to stay in the news and the whole bit. The Formula 2 and Formula 3 series will be back together at Sochi at Putindrome, and Formula 2 going over the standings. Oscar Piastri has a 15-point lead, or Guan Yu Zhou. Robert Schwartzman's third, Dan Ticktum's fourth, and Teo Pocher is fifth. Jan Daruvula ended up getting a win at the last round, in the one race there in the sprint race, one of the three races there, and at Monza to get to seventh. But it's been a rougher year than it was last year for him. Been a tighter series in regards to drivers that are able to score and be competitive. We'll see if Piastri can put himself closer to possibly getting the Formula 3 or Formula 2 championship after his run last year in Formula 3, which saw him beat Logan Sargent, amongst others. And yeah, so it's F3, Raymond Campbell's F3 and F3 revert to old format. F3 season finale moved from Austin to Sochi. Oh, wow. The season has been moved to logistical scuppered plans. Oh, that sucks. The overall cost of the plan. Oh, wow. That's interesting. That's a shame. Well, at least W Series will be at Circuit of the Americas. But yeah, so the F3 finale will be this weekend at Putindrome. Didn't really know that. I may have read it, but I didn't know. So Dennis Hauger now 45-point lead. It'll be very difficult for that to be passed. Jack Doohan is in second. Clement Novalak is in a battle for third with Victor Martins, Frederick Vesti, Alexander Smollier. So 15 points between those drivers. Now Logan Sargent is ninth. You have other guys like Artur Leclerc, David Schumacher behind him. Matteo Nannini, there's Jack Crawford, Enzo Fittipaldi, who moved up to Formula 2, actually. Juan Manuel Correa is 20th. Kalen Frederick actually scored points. Hunter Yaney's been replaced for the last race. Ayrton Simmons will be driving for them. The Charus team with Logan Sargent. So got awesome for so the GB3 second driver standings. All right. No podium than reporting 16th has been started. Last year's 9th. Okay, so there is that. The World Superbike Series was at Catalunya last week, but Barcelona Circuit Barcelona de Catalunya, whatever. Race 1 saw Scott Redding win over Axel Bassani and Michael Ruben Rinaldi. Johnny Ray finished 4th. Garrett Gerloff crashed in the first lap. Toprak Rasuglu crashed on his owner 14 laps later. So that's a problem there in regards to the points. In the Super Pole race, we had Jonathan Ray beat Rasuglu. Raskataglu, I'm probably fucking his name up, but who cares? Alvaro Bautista 3rd. Alex Lowe's Michael Ruben Rinaldi, top 5. Gerloff finished 8th. And then in race 2, you saw Michael Ruben Rinaldi win over Raskataglu, Redding, Bautista, Andrea Locatelli. Johnny Ray finished 6th. Garrett Gerloff finished 7th. So interesting. With now 4 rounds to go in the season, there'll be a little bit of a break of sorts. Jerez next this week, then they'll go to the Algarve the following week, and then there will be some gaps of time between the final couple of races. The standings see Rasuglu up by 1 point over Johnny Ray. Scott Redding is in 3rd. Rinaldi in 4th, Locatelli in 5th, but Redding has a 120-point lead over Ruben Rinaldi. Garrett Gerloff is 9th in the standings going into this last part of the year, so we'll see how that goes for them. Let's move on to Formula One. The Russian Grand Prix, Putindrome, a track that has generally shown to not be great for much of anything, will hold the 15th round of what is currently a 23 race calendar, but obviously there's been some adjustments and changes, so we'll see how many. It sounds like there's already lost the Japanese Grand Prix, so that'll actually be 22. Mexico, I think, is going away, so that'll be 21, but they're going to replace one of the races, I think, with the race in Qatar, and we'll see what happens there. But Verstappen v. Hamilton, after their latest get-together, what will come of that in your mind at Russia there, Josh? It looks like it's going to be a wet weekend there, so that's something that hasn't happened there before. It's not a temporary circuit, but it kind of is. It's basically in the Olympic car park. So wonder how rain conditions will translate to a track that's generally known to not be very good. It's been a Mercedes house. Every race has been won by a Mercedes driver. Lewis Hamilton has 4 wins there. Valtteri Bottas has 2, and Rosberg has 1. So can Max Verstappen continue the run or continue his run and actually beat Mercedes at a track where Mercedes has been dominant? Or can Lewis Hamilton kind of take the fight back to the Red Bulls with the wet conditions possible coming this weekend?
Well, I think for Max Verstappen, I think mostly he has to be able to outpace Lewis Hamilton, which he has for most of the year, at least on speed. And he's been able to do that fairly consistently for most of these races. So I think it's going to come down to that. And then it's also going to come down to strategy for Red Bull. If they can, out strategize Mercedes there, factor in the amount of pit stops that they have to take and have more efficient pit stops, certainly more efficient than what they had at Monza with the mistake that they had, which led to that accident between Verstappen and Hamilton. But then also for Mercedes, they're obviously going to lean back on their history of dominance there. They know how to get around Sochi. So I think for them, they just have to use what they know, what works, what doesn't work, and go from there and just try to outmaneuver on the track probably, or try an undercut if the strategy allows for it, and actually get ahead of Verstappen. And of course, you said rain could be a factor, which might have an effect on the race. Maybe it makes the racing a little bit closer, or maybe we see something wild, especially in wet conditions, with drivers, being in wet tires and all that, or intermediates. Should there be any kind of accident that could happen from that, or just careful driving, allowing for maybe a little bit more closer racing? We'll have to see. I think all of that could play into this race, but the like you said, Russia is not really a good racetrack overall, so can't really see too much exciting racing happening. I think it's mostly going to be processional, so we'll just have to watch the strategy and see if that's where the action is going to be. I think for the most part, it's just going to be that kind of race, and we'll have to just deal with it. I think another storyline to talk about is the midfield, especially with McLaren, who of course won their first race since 2012 at Monza 2 weekends ago, and then going forward, you have the battle with Ferrari, who's had to play a little bit of catch up here, and I think now with Ferrari getting a new power unit, of course, it's going to have a grid penalty for Leclerc. Maybe not in this race, but in future races could help them. It's not going to be a huge gain or anything massive, less than 10 horsepower, but of course, any type of gain that you can get can help. So I think for Ferrari, especially with Leclerc, potentially maybe he drives through the field and finishes somewhere, in the top five potentially, or in that range. Um, Certainly not a podium, but definitely very high up in the midfield. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what McLaren can do to counter that, if they feel like they don't have the pace, or they need to protect their position in the title championship for Lando Norris to get him potentially up on the podium in the drivers' championship, or in the constructors championship for the team, for them to get the highest possible finish that they can there. So I think those are, for me, I think the most two intriguing battles, just the midfield battle, especially with the two midfield teams that we know are really good, McLaren and Ferrari, and then of course the title fight with Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It looks like the temperatures are going to be really cold there. I think they're going to have dry running. It looks like on Friday, but then there will be wet conditions the rest of the weekend, or it won't be horrendous with lack of visibility like they had at Spa, so they'll be able to race, I would think. But it'll make it a little bit more interesting than what most Russian Grand Prix have been, which is a snooze fest. So, what can Lewis do? This is basically the stretch run. We're starting to see the pinch come in regards to some of these races being able to come off, in large part because of the restrictions that exist within England. Of course, because of COVID, and places that versus places that don't want to take it as seriously. In certain people within the governments in all these places, certain places don't, and that's a problem when you consider how many thousands, hundreds of people, or whatever, that are working for these teams and having to be moved around logistically, and all the stuff, all the equipment and people that are involved in running a Formula One Grand Prix. But we'll see about all that, and in also with the midfield battle itself, as Josh said, will McLaren, will it be Ferrari, will we look at some of these smaller team like the Williams? Can they continue the momentum they've been on in recent Grand Prix with Russell, but also even with Latifi? What will the Toro Rosso team do versus the Alpine Aston Martin situation there? So that's all up in the air. All things we'll get into more in detail next week in episode 80 as we review this race and this race weekend in more detail. The Grand Prix of Long Beach, one of the classics in all of motorsports, one of the classic street course races in all of motorsport. And unlike where it usually lands, which is very early in the calendar, for years it was a opener or one of the first races of the IndyCar season. This year, after having to take it off the calendar last year, it'll be the season finale for the IndyCar series. Snoop Dogg's going to be doing the lead-in on NBCSN, so that'll be cool. Hopefully they put him in the booth instead of Paul Tracy. That would be an immediate upgrade. But, you can wish for things. But Alex Palou versus Pato O'Ward. Alex Palou has to basically outscore Pato O'Ward. He has to earn, as long as he has a 51-point lead by the end of the race, there's no mathematical way or I guess 54 is the maximum you can get or something, and he has a 35-point lead, so I guess it's 19 point. He needs to earn 19 points or something, or 19 points more than Pato O'Ward. Pato O'Ward, of course, has run well on street courses. He's run well everywhere, really. But so has Alex Palou. And Alex Palou has been the more competitive or more consistent driver all year. And Long Beach is a place where, of course, Ganassi has won, with whether it's with Dixon, with Dario, with whatever, the Vassar and Alex Zanardi at Montoya, et cetera, et cetera. It's an uphill climb for the Arrow McLaren team. They tried to do some things these last couple of weeks. I mean, even in practice last week at Laguna, they were nowhere, and they needed a miracle run from O'Ward to get them into this Fast Six. They never really had the pace to compete. So do we see, or do you foresee anything really coming? Do you see a Hail Mary coming from Pat O'Ward or even Joseph Newgarden, for that matter, that could possibly go and torpedo what looks like a likely championship for Alex Palou in his first season for Chip Ganassi? Or are we going to see the coronation of a new superstar in IndyCar for Chip Ganassi as he moves towards focusing on IndyCar again and probably sports cars in more detail, since his Cup effort will be done soon?
Right. I think for Alex Palou, I mean, I think for the most part, this is going to be a coronation type of race. I think the likelihood of him having a mechanical failure or having a crash is probably fairly low. I think, well, mechanical failure, I mean, it could happen when you saw it at Indy Road Course a few weeks ago, but I think that they've been getting better in that department, and they have to bring the best equipment possible to go out and win this championship. So I think it would probably be fairly unlikely that they would have a mechanical failure. And then I think for a crash to happen, it would have to be a driver that was over aggressive or something like that. And I think even with the controversies that we've seen this year with drivers not having good standards and things like that, stuff that we saw at Nashville, just feel like with this being the championship race, probably drivers going to try to respect the championship point leader as much as possible during the race. And I think for them to make a mistake would, have to, and take him out, that would have to be a really bad thing to happen. So I think they would probably respect him and Pat O'Ward too, for that matter. I think maybe one thing that could come into play is the blend line coming out of the pits going into turn one at Long Beach. We saw it a few years ago with Scott Dixon and Simon Pagenaud, I think 2017 Long Beach Grand Prix. They had an issue, or no, it was 2016. Yeah, that happened, and that was a issue with the blend line. And I think Scott Dixon merged back into the blend line a little bit too soon, and there is maybe controversy there with should he have been penalized for that, and if the stewards decide to call a penalty on that for Palou, certainly could affect the points championship, but I don't think it would help it by much. And I think another factor for Palou is the fact that he's got the leading IndyCar championship title leader in Scott Dixon, won the most titles in IndyCar racing so far. And then, of course, the NASCAR 7-time champion turned IndyCar rookie and Jimmy Johnson in his back corner to lean on for championship experience and advice. And he's already said him and Johnson have talked, and Johnson's given him some tricks. Don't know what those are, but of course, those always remain a secret, and a lot of advice. So it's the value of having a guy like Johnson, even though may not have any actual IndyCar experience, and probably Johnson needs advice from Palou on how to drive an IndyCar. Just the championship advice, how to approach a championship, and how to have a good mindset going into it. That's something that a guy like Jimmy Johnson can provide for Alex Palou. So I think for the most part, this is all. It's everything for Palou. This is he has everything to lose in this race and everything to gain as well. But I think in his counterpart in this title for Pato Award, I mean, they just have to have the absolute best pace that they can. They've got to be able to win the race, I think, to have it a shot at this. And so they've got to bring their best car, and maybe they go on a 2-stop strategy to keep the lead. Maybe they feel like they can make it on a 3-stop strategy and have the best tires at the end and win the race. So we'll have to see what happens there. And then also, when do they go on blacks versus reds in this race? To start off with reds, or do they go on the reds towards the end of the race? So that would be something to look out for. But I think overall for Alex Palou, it's his title to win. But of course, there are other drivers in the series too that could win the race, but still not win the championship. Maybe Joseph Newgarden has a shot at winning the race, and clear by the end of the race, or the middle point, maybe that he has not a chance of winning the race, and it's going to come down to Palou and Award. Maybe they try something to win the race, or they just have a good car, but nothing to gain in the points championship. So I think a lot of these guys have the opportunity to maybe go out and win the race. So I think either Alex Palou or one of the other guys who's had history here at this track wins. Maybe Scott Dixon wins. Maybe Pagano has a winning race in what could be his last race for Team Penske, as he looks like he might be on the outside looking in for that organization. So a lot of guys that could win this race. But I think if I'm going to pick a guy, probably just go ahead and pick Palou, just be on the safe side.
I think for me, I'll go with Scott Dixon. It's a safe pick too. It's rare that he's not racing for a championship when you've won 6 championships and you've been as good as Scott Dixon has been. It's rare that he has a free reign. He basically has a free go at a race. Maybe he's looser. Maybe he's able to qualify better. And it also, in turn, if Scott Dixon wins, it protects Alex Palou, because it's a higher likelihood if he's winning that Pato Award, even if he had the pace, will not be. That'll obviously mean Pato Award can't. And that, in turn, would mean he basically can't win the championship. We talked about Herta earlier. He's become kind of a street course master, tighter circuit master. Usually when he wins, he dominates races, as per talking about last week. He's obviously a favorite. You look at guys who are racing for a career like Pagano, like a Hunter Ray, who's won there before. Both of them, I think, have. So there's people that there's a lot of guys that really have some opportunity. A lot of fast guys trying to run out the season the right way. There are opportunities for cautions. So they always talk about the 2 idiots in the booth with Lee Diffie, always yell about the danger zone. Well, it actually exists at Long Beach because it could actually happen, because they do full course yells happen. You consider Nashville, they're running over each other the whole entire time too. So the whole, as Josh mentioned, the whole driving standard thing could become an issue. But I think it'll be a clean fight. Alex Palou will end up getting crowned the champion. It won't be because of a lack of effort for Pato O'Ward and Arrow Spam. They'll be Arrow McLaren full out next year. He'll have Rosenquist back as his teammate for whatever reason. They may have a third car, but Pato O'Ward will be a factor next year, along with Colton Herta, along with Alex Palou. And this IndyCar series is just going to go from strength to strength going into 2022. A lot of races on NBC next year. Hopefully they update their announced crew and team and kind of bolster it to raise the stature of the series with a lot of the great changes that are coming. But they'll be marketing Alex Palou as a champion here starting next week, because I think that's what's going to happen. Stranger things have happened, though. It is IndyCar. NASCAR will have their triple header at Vegas. The first race will be the South Point 400 on Sunday evening at Vegas. Larson won his first race for Hendrick in March at this racetrack. And I think he will do the same thing on Sunday evening. If it isn't him, I would say that it would be a Gibbs car, probably the 19. But yeah, as I said, with IndyCar Series, stranger things have happened. Maybe Kurt Busch pulls one out of his ass. He did it last year in this race. And now that he's eliminated out of the playoffs, he has no fucks to give. What do you see, Josh? Is it Larson for you or Truex, or do you see somebody else? Is there a Ford that could possibly make a play here? Is Blaney somebody you would look at Vegas, considering his recent run of form and winning at a 1.5 mile racetrack earlier in the year at Atlanta?
Well, I think for this race, it could be Larson's race. But then when I look back to the spring, Larson didn't really take over the race until after the end of stage two. He had been up there in that race, but once stage two kind of came around, that was like his turning point, I guess, in winning the race. But I mean, there are other drivers that could be a factor. William Byron led laps at this race in the spring. So did Denny Hamlin. So I think it's probably going to be a Hendrick versus Gibbs battle. And then I think it's probably going to be between Larson and Hamlin. I think maybe Truex is up there. Kyle Busch could be up there too if things go right for him. But I think overall, if it's not Larson, I feel like it's probably a William Byron. Actually, I think he has a good track record of this racetrack, and he's this year, and he's starting up towards the front, so that's definitely help for him. Doesn't have to pass as many cars, and I think for Chase Elliott, he's got a little bit of work to do. Starting in 11th, got to make his way through the field to get up to the lead. So I think for Larson, should be at least the first two stages probably dominated by him. But then maybe stuff starts happening in the last stage, and we get maybe a late yellow, and then somebody else is able to storm up through the field or whatever, pull something off crazy and win this race, which could happen. I feel like with last year, that's kind of how Kurt Busch won his race at this track, and he was kind of able to hang around there towards the front, or towards the lead throughout the whole race, and then through some pitch strategy towards the end, staying out, he was able to win that race. So that could possibly happen again, but maybe not with Kurt Busch as the driver there. So I'll go a little bit different, I guess, and pick Denny Hamlin and see if he's able to start off this round just like how he did the first round here in this 2021 NASCAR playoffs.
And that would be something after not winning during the whole entire regular season, losing the regular season title to Larson after accumulating a huge points lead, going and winning the Southern 500, and going and winning again in the second round. That's a way to do it. You win once every round, you win the championship. That's a straightforward way to go and do this deal. So we'll see what happens with that. The top two guys in this series all year. That's our picks. We'll see how those land next week when we review this race. Xfinity series, I think we kind of referenced it earlier. Uh, it's Allmendinger and Cindric. They're going to start on the front row at in the Alsco 302 on Saturday. Uh, Allgaier and Haley will be on row 2. Ty Gibbs will be up there with Sam Mayer. Ty Gibbs will be starting 6th. Sam Mayer will be starting 11th. They both Mayer had a good run at Bristol, one of his best runs he's had since getting in the 8 car, a track where he had won at, of course, in both a truck and a K&N car. Gagson will be driving, or Herbst will be driving a South Point Ford, actually. It'll be interesting. So, yeah, I'll let you go first in regards to this. Josh, Cindric early in the year had all the momentum, and but Allmendinger's taken that momentum in this last part of the regular season. And Colleague has been fast at all different racetracks. So is the Penske car with Austin Cindric. But who do you look at as the favorite, at least for this weekend's race, and maybe in general towards this championship run for the Xfinity series?
I think for this race, we'll start off here. I mean, it would be easy to pick Cindric or Allmendinger, and both of them have been pretty good this year. Of course, Cindric had the momentum for most of the first half of the year, and then Allmendinger's had his run as of late. That's led to him winning the regular season title and all that. And of course, Allmendinger did win the first race at Las Vegas earlier this year. But I mean, with Ty Gibbs in the field and how strong 54 car has been with him in the driver's seat and with Kyle Busch in the driver's seat, it's hard to ignore their ability to win races. And I feel like he could play spoiler for the Xfinity regulars in this championship. Of course, another Gibbs car to look out for is Daniel Hemrick, who had a chance to win back in the spring. And this was back when Daniel Hemrick was a little bit more dominant, I guess, relatively speaking, when he was actually leading laps. He hasn't really led a whole lot lately in this series, but back in the spring, that was when people were talking more about Daniel Hemrick and his inability to win races. And so now here, I mean, if he has to be able to get up to the front and get the lead and then keep the lead, and then Ty Gibbs just has a lot of speed. He's got a lot of talent in that car, and we've seen what he can do in this series, and he's just been very, very good in his limited time. So it's hard to ignore him there. So I mean, if I was to pick a regular, I mean, I'd pick Allmendinger, but I feel like realistically speaking, Ty Gibbs has a chance to win this race just being in the 54 car. So I pick Ty Gibbs for this race. But I think overall in this round, I think I'm going to go with Allmendinger winning this round in the playoffs, but I'm going to go Cindric going for, I guess, like who might be the best overall for the rest of the playoffs. I think, with the Charlotte Roval is going to be in this round. Allmendinger has won at this track in the past. Of course, Cindric has road course experience, but I'm going to go with Allmendinger there. But I think overall, I think this is Austin Cindric's title to lose, and of course, he's defending the title as well as he won last year.
I think that Cindric goes and gets back to the dominant ways of earlier in the year. I think he might have been experimenting, his focus in between trying what they're going to do next year. I would venture to believe the team that he has built on the Xfinity side with Brian Wilson is going to move up with him to the Cup effort to take over the 2 car. Uh, there's a whole bunch of moving parts there. I think that might have been a distraction. But now that they're in this battle and basically as it stands, they've gotten reset. They're starting at scratch. I mean, of course, the playoff points are playoff points. Those are going to keep on transferring through. But I think Cindric gets back on the horse, gets the moment, takes the early momentum, and starts off this playoff with a victory. I mean, Gibbs, of course, is going to be up there more than likely. Might move somebody, which that's his thing. Uh, you can't sleep on the JRM cars, though. Gagson's from there. You probably want to win a home game there, and then go and puke in between the walls. But hopefully that doesn't happen. Allgaier, somebody that you're never going to sleep on, and if he can get to Phoenix, everyone talks about it. Oh, if he gets to Phoenix, he has a chance, and he's had that chance, and he hasn't been able to pull through. So, Allmendinger hasn't been in a championship fight in a long time. So, what would he do given that situation? He's kind of been a hired gun, kind of rolling the dice for a while, but now he's points racing. Can he put it together and put this playoff together? A battle tested team, battle tested driver in Austin Cindric, something that we will find out. Second round of the Truck Series playoff begins in earnest at Las Vegas. It'll be a very spread out round for them. But John Hunter Nemechek will start on the pole, and in regards to that'll be Friday night. It'll be at Las Vegas. They will, and Sheldon Creed, of course, will be up there. As I mentioned, Sheldon Creed will actually be starting ninth after he got wrecked by Chandler Smith. The top 7 out of the top 8 are the remaining playoff drivers. Gilliland, the only guy sneaking in there. Austin Hill is also in the top 10. I mean, it's pretty much John Hunter versus Sheldon Creed, who we mentioned earlier. But I also look at the fact that John Hunter has been very, very good on these cookie cutter tracks all year. I have a hard time believing that somebody's going to beat him in this spot. And I think it would be something if somebody did. The only person I can see doing that is Sheldon Creed, because he just doesn't give a fuck anymore. He's got a job, so he's a free rolling. If you read social media, there's stuff about Chris Hacker, who's driving the 45 truck this weekend. I don't think they'll mention him at all, but there is some stuff going on with him. If you really want to go into that rabbit hole, got some other sword swallowers and whatever. Brett Moffitt randomly is in the 25 truck this weekend. I don't know why. Grant Enfinger will be in the 9. You have some other dead weight and people around there. Daddy's Money people, and the likes, and yeah. So really, John Hunter, it's my pick. I figure he goes and wins at Vegas. Zane Smith driving an Allegiant Chevy. That's pretty cool. Throwing back to his truck owner. And I mean, if Sheldon Creed wins, it wouldn't surprise me either. How about you, Josh? What do you think in regards to this Friday night at Las Vegas for the trucks?
Well, I mean, it's hard to disagree with you there. I mean, with John Hunter, Nemechek, with the way that they've driven on the 1.5 mile tracks this year, I think it's all in his hands to be able to win this race. And I think what stood out to me about his year so far is just the fact that he beat Kyle Busch in his own equipment on a 1.5 mile track. And normally Kyle Busch goes out and wins these races unless like he makes a mistake. He always wins in the truck series. And I think the fact that he was actually able to get beaten in his own equipment by a younger driver, a driver that should be at least in Xfinity. I think that says a lot about the ability of the driver when they get into good equipment. So I think John Hunter Nemechek has all the power in his hands to go and win this race. And I mean, I try to usually go different on the picks, but I mean, it's hard to disagree and say that he wouldn't win this race. So I'm gonna have to pick him here to win this race. But I think Sheldon Creed, they just have to, for them to have a chance at the race, they have to have good pace, of course, but I think they have to be able to keep up with the track as it changes throughout the race. And if it comes down to green, white, and checker, and he's right next to Sheldon or right next to John Hunter Nemechek, gonna have to use a lot of the side draft. He's right behind him on a late race restart. Gonna have to get a better jump, get out of second gear quicker into third and fourth, and then try to make it 3 wide into the corner if possible, and get Nemechek out of his groove there going in the corner. So stuff like that could happen, but ultimately I think this is going to be a race that John Henry Nemechek wins.
Yeah, and we'll get into all that in regards to all the results that happen at Las Vegas next week. On the GSP, I'll be remiss if I don't mention the Carolina Nationals NHRA. They'll be running in St. Louis this weekend, actually. Their playoffs are going on. Josh Hart won in Top Fuel. Tim Wilkerson in Funny Car after winning Indianapolis a couple weeks ago. Kyle Koretsky wins his first career Pro Stock race, Pro Stock car race. Angel Sampey wins her first Pro Stock motorcycle race in a while for Vance and Hines Suzuki, not Vance and Hines Harley or Buell. So that was interesting, as they'll be racing at St. Louis and Gateway this coming weekend to continue their playoff situation there. All right, moving on to NFL Week 2. As Josh mentioned earlier, the Urban Meyer experiment has started out 0-2 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. On the flip side, the San Francisco 49ers had a tight battle with the Philadelphia Eagles. 1 o'clock game, East Coast game, but they come out on top, going and holding Jalen Hurts to under 300 total or scrimmage yards, which is rare in his early NFL career. So something to be said about that. In terms of fantasy, Josh won the week in the league with the highest point total, beating me by 15.2 points. So he gets a weekly win W. When it comes to the two-way standings, he's actually in third. I think in regards to the regular standings for the league, you're pretty much, I think you're in the top 2 or 3 or 4 or some crap. I'm going to go in there and just get into that. To Wired Coin 2022 Olympics. Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm in a good place, I think, overall. The league standings going into this week.
Yeah, the Yankees actually won a game. It's a miracle. Considering they're shitting the bed. And the Mets are getting their ass kicked by Boston. Super. Live sports reaction here on the GSP. Josh will be second right now. He'll be going in, and he's only second by 0.5 of a point. The difference in points against is 1.4 also. So it's a very tight battle between him and Wilson. Wilson will be playing Vic in a battle of guys who listen to the fantasy footballers. Joe, who's been the unluckiest of losers so far, the defending champion, 0-2, but has had points that could have put him at 2-0. Be playing against my boy Demi, Manny with luck, and that's it because he can't even pick his team or check his team. is 2-0. He'll be playing Nikki. I'll be playing Professor J. Josh will be playing Luke. And in week 3, I'll let you go first, Josh, in regards to your actual team and your fantasy teams, and then I'll get into my thing before we get into your sim segment.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the real team, of course, the Jags, they had an opportunity, I guess, to I don't know if to win, but certainly the first offensive drive went out and got a touchdown. But then after that, they had nothing, and it looks like overall the Jaguars' offense is out of sync. Um, Trevor Lawrence dropping back and throwing inaccurate balls, a lot of uncatchable balls, and then some of the receivers not getting open or getting separation, and then uh, receivers dropping passes also. So all of that comes into play. Jaguars' offensive line seems to look good on paper, not giving up a lot of sacks and pressures, but then I feel like maybe if you look at the tape a little bit better or a little bit more, I think the offensive line not getting it seems like they're getting pushed back into Trevor Lawrence or James Robinson. So I think that's maybe where a lot of the issues stem for the Jags, just not having a good offensive line overall. Need to see a lot more dominant play out of them. I mean, they're not horrible, but they're not helpful either in their play. So that's something to look out for. I mean, they did seem to be, for most part, do a little bit better job, but than they did in the first game against Houston. But I think overall, and I think that's the play that, or the section of the team that needs to improve the most outside of the quarterback. So, we'll see what happens this week. Defensively, stopping the run. I mean, they seem to be okay stopping the run, but got to generate a lot of pass rush. They get a lot of pressure, but they don't figure out how to get home to the quarterback. Of course, there's just a lot left to be desired there. So we'll see what happens. Of course, looks like maybe it might be the swan song for Josh Lambo. Missed 2 field goals, missed all his field goals to start the year, and then of course for Lambo, I mean he's been automatic, but then all of a sudden, not sure what happened to him. Not sure if he's hurt. Not sure if he's got some mental issues going on in the back of his mind. Sucks because I mean he's a genuine dude. I've had him sign a ball before in training camp. He's a really nice guy. So he's supposed to be the guy that everybody likes, but they're gonna have to probably find somebody from off the street or something to replace him and stuff. So I mean, they should have tried out some guy this week, but I don't think they did. But I think if he has another bad performance, they're definitely gonna look a lot more into finding somebody to try out and potentially give the starting job or the kicking job to Josh Lambo there. So a lot left to be desired there. We'll go talk about in college really briefly. The Florida Gators had a chance to win against Alabama, made mistakes in the first quarter, but ended up coming back almost to beat Alabama. Then they could have tied the game at the end, but then they missed the 2-point conversion, trying to go for a read option, hanging off the running back. Emory Jones could have had a chance to maybe kept the ball on the zone read and go to the end zone, but kind of had a funky handoff, kind of delaying to the running back, and then he got tackled short of the goal line. So didn't tie the game there, but then on defense, they couldn't get a stop to stop Alabama and get the ball back into the end zone. So for the Gators, close loss, but it shows they can be competitive against a tough opponent in the SEC like Alabama. So if they win the Florida Georgia game later in the year, I think Alabama and Florida will match up again in the SEC championship game later in the year, and that would decide probably who goes to the college football playoffs there. So a lot to look forward to, even though in a loss, that's what you want to see in a loss. I mean, overall, don't really care about the wins and losses. It's more about how you played in the game, if you were competitive or not, and that's what matters most to me. For the Jags, they lost, not competitive. Gators, they lost, they were competitive. So yin and yang there. But in fantasy, we'll see what happens. Yeah, 2-0 in this league. My other league, 1-0. My other league did pick up the Panthers defense, and I think I'm going to start them tomorrow night against Houston Texans, starting rookie quarterback there. So should be interesting matchup there, and expect the Panthers to dominate as they have the first two games of the season. And I think for this matchup in our league, we'll see what happens. Could be an easy win, but things could happen. Especially, I mean, kind of shaky on Saquon Barkley. I mean, he's supposed to be projected to score really high his first game back, but not sure how he will do. His first game back from fully, I guess, fully from injury, where he's going to be taking most of the snaps as the running back there. And then, Lamar Jackson, as long as he doesn't throw too many interceptions, should be fine there. Then we'll see what happens for there. So looking forward, as usual, to play this week in fantasy and all my leagues, and hopefully come out on top.
Yeah, and for me, a recovery week after a brutal week one in the Fall Brawl League, to come back and get a victory there against Nikki, score a lot of points. It's kind of like the Bull League this week, where, well, like shit, resetting my handicap in the Monday League, but then came back yesterday and bowled pretty good, and we won all 7 points. So it kind of felt the same way. In the Nipper League, I'm the defending champion. Won week one, got destroyed in week two. Like Josh, went and picked up Carolina defense in that other league. I picked up the Carolina defense in my third league that I'm playing in, that I'm not had a competitive team so far in 2 weeks. So looking to see what Darnold on the offensive side, what they can do, but then also what that defense will be able to do against Davis Mills and the Houston Texans, the Cully Ray Rogers out there, and if they're going to have any chance. In terms of the Niners, as I said, beating Philly was a big deal to go and maintain momentum. They'll be going against Rod Rogers and Ron Jones at the the Gene Dome this week on Sunday Night Football, and so that'll be cool to see how that works and how everything goes. Oh, well, that's what it is. Oh, I see. And you go and if they can go and make it 3-0, Rodgers he had a rough week one. Week two, he came back and did work on Monday Night Football, but that pass rush is relatively healthy. You have Bosa, you have Ford. He's had the Levi Stadium's kind of been a house of horrors for Aaron Rodgers. So can he exorcise those demons and come through, or will Jimmy G and company go and get another win, continue that, get to 3-0 in a very tough NFC West? Wide receivers, Deebo Samuel's one of the leading receivers in the league. Running back situation's kind of murky, but Elijah Mitchell right now is still the starter. GK hasn't really done much. Left side of the offensive line, of course, with Trent Williams, Alex Mack as the center, two of the best there is. I mean, Trent Williams basically the best tackle in the league. Of course, mentioned the defensive line. They are key, because if Aaron Rodgers has time, that's for any. But really, with Aaron Rodgers, that secondary is very vulnerable. Jared Goff proved that a couple weeks ago. So we will see what happens with that. Lenore, the rookie, has played well, but still, the safeties don't know how to cover. So you could beat them over the top, down the middle. Bob Tonyan, even though Big Play Fred or Big Play Dre are out there, you can still get them on the inside. Randall Cobb might have a good game. So all to play for. Two of the better teams in the NFC for sure. So it'll be an interesting Sunday Night Football matchup. The primetime games in general so far this year haven't been all that bad. So we'll get into all that. How about this talk about your sim deal, Josh. How are things going on iRacing and what you're doing there, and what are you um, going to, or what are you looking at this week in regards to any racing, whether it's IndyCar, NASCAR, or something else?
Yeah, I mean, I actually lately haven't been on iRacing as much. Just had other things to do. But uh, one piece of news that I would like to bring up is that iRacing has made a deal with Mercedes F1, and they will be making the F1 car that Mercedes has this year. So the 2021 W12 Mercedes car, and then next year's Formula One car that they'll be racing in 2022 under the new regulations. And so that's going to be interesting. iRacing, they haven't made a Formula One uh, race car since 2016 with the McLaren like MP430, I think. That's the car that they last made that was from an F1 team. And I think over the winter they released a fantasy F1 car called the Delara IR1 IR01, and that's basically like a high horsepower, low downforce combination. Kind of sounds like the old champ cars from the 90s, but it's got kind of more of the F1 style to it there. So it's kind of more, on the lines of like the F 2004 ish, kind of like that. So um, I think what would be interesting is once those cars get released, what will the handling be like in the car? What people, the participation in these races, that's going to be like. If there's going to be a lot of people at first participating, but they can't get a handle on it, and then drops to maybe only a couple of people participating in each room or each race. I think that's something to look at. I mean, we have F1 drivers like Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, both of them very veterans at iRacing. I'm sure there's other F1 drivers or even guys like Romain Grosjean, who's had F1 experience in the past. What will they think when they have a chance to drive this once the game is released or once that new content is released? Do they like it, or is it going to be a thing like the criticism that's been laid at the iRacing IndyCar last year, especially when we had the pandemic and everybody was iRacing instead of real racing? Like Connor Daly had issues with the car handling. Scott Dixon had issues with it. So I think those comments, especially like in a stream when they're streaming themselves while they're racing online, especially with Lando. I know Lando's big into it, the Twitch stuff as well. If he has any comments about the handling of the car on iRacing. So that's going to be something to look out for coming in the next year, and does help maybe get people interested on the F1 side into iRacing. That not a lot of, I mean, there are a lot of F1 people that are into iRacing probably, but I mean, sure, it's especially with the new car and with Mercedes, I'm sure there'll be a lot of interest there. So we'll see what happens. And then as far as what I'm doing this week, I think I don't know. I'm not sure what they're doing with the 87 car, the IndyCar. I have to look at the schedule. I think 87's at Hickory Speedway, which is a new track, new short track that's been released. And I want to say, IndyCar, the Road Series is at Long Beach, and then the Oval Series is at Nashville. So maybe do the Long Beach one, get a little bit of experience there on that track. Although that track is a little bit hard on performance because there's so much stuff that the game has to render. So I'll try to see what I can do there. But yeah, that's what I've been doing on sim racing, and of course the video game stuff, which I've been mostly playing. Been playing a lot of Madden, playing as the Jags, playing as people against other people online. Gotta live out the fantasy, I guess. And try to, at least if your real team isn't winning in real life, got to try and see if you can win in the video game. And been making a lot of people quit. I mean, at first it was just me being really bad, but I feel like I've started to get the hang of it again in Madden, and I've been making a lot of people rage quit lately. Just stack up the points in the first half, third quarter, and then fourth quarter comes, they throw another pick, or I score another TD, and then I go, yeah, I'm out, quit. So we'll see what happens.
Rage quitting. That's always a thing in sim and in gaming. Rage quitting is something that seems to happen in NASCAR too. So something we'll see with that. It's also something that could happen as a Jags fan, considering having to watch Urban Meyer coaching the team the way he's doing so far. It would make me want to rage quit. But Josh is more patient than I am. I have had plenty of times to rage quit over the past 2 decades or so as a 49er fan, so I have full understanding of that. Um, yeah, so guess that's the end here for this episode of the GSP. Uh, where can we follow you, Josh? Not only for your streaming, but also on social media.
Yeah, of course, as always, go for the Twitch streams, twitch.tv/retailer2. That's where all the iRacing stuff will be. Try to maybe stream some other games that I'm doing as well, so you can see that. Get a little variety and stuff, so it's not always iRacing. And then, of course, with socials, follow Twitter at JP Huffine and try to tweet about the racing this weekend. Probably tweet about the Jags and all that stuff, the Gators as well, and have good discussion on there, good banter. So always looking forward to it.
And for me, you could follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can follow our show at Grip Strip Pod, capital G, capital S, capital P, on Twitter. Grip Strip Podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, Podbean, Pandora, basically anywhere where you can find podcasts, you can find the Rip Strip Podcast. PhilipGMatthew.com. You can find the podcast every single week. I'll be talking about racing, talking about football. I'm on my Instagram, PhilipGMatthew28, probably talking about bowling because that's one of my passions. I'm not going to be some sort of major league athlete, but I love bowling, love car racing, love things going fast. So it's all good. Hoping the Niners can go 3-0. And on Sunday Night Football, definitely be watching that. And we'll see what happens with all that. See if Jacksonville can get their first win of the year. And how we'll be doing in fantasy football in general. I got 3 teams hoping to get one to their first win, keep the momentum going in the Fall Brawl League, and get back on the winning track on another. We'll give you all of that. We'll review the Formula One at Putindrome, IndyCar, Long Beach Grand Prix. We'll review NASCAR at Vegas, preview all the races that'll come up next week, and whatever else comes along here as we go on between now and the next episode of the Rip Strip Podcast. Take care of yourself. Take care of one another. People that matter to you most. Don't be super ignorant in regards to certain things. We're not out of the woods in certain areas in certain ways. So you can just think of one another, or think of what matters to you most and really care about that. And think of other people. Think about your fellow man or woman in society, the way things are when things have become very insular and very individualistic. It'd be a good thing so that we can have the freedoms that we should have. And with that, for Josh, I'm Phil. Episode 79 of Grip Strip Podcast. Thank you for listening each and every week, or whenever you do listen, however you listen. And we'll see you next time. Take care.